If you want your melodies to be more melodic, this is how you do it. If you want your chords to be more interesting, this is how you do it. If you want to get that Legend of Zelda ethereal sound, this is how you do it. Hi, my name is Cameron Coffey, and here we talk about all things music theory, composition, and production. So today I wanted to really do a little deep dive on this concept that I've been thinking about a lot, right? It's not anything particularly new, but I think that the way that I'm thinking about it is interesting. So the concept in question is called scale chord theory, or chord scale theory. So before we can do anything, we got to talk about what are chords, what are modes, and why do I say that everything is Lydian? We need to discuss what exactly is Lydian. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about are modes. Modes are essentially what happens when you start a scale on a note that's not the root. What's important to know is that for every note in a key, there is a mode that goes along with it. So we can describe modes as scales built off of a note in a key, right? So part 2, right? Chord scale theory. Chord scale theory is the idea that for any given chord, there is a scale or a mode that you can play that is best going to give the sound of that chord. For example, a dominant 7 chord is almost always going to sound like Mixolydian in a major key. It's going to sound like there is a major 3rd and a flat 7, because that is what defines a dominant 7 chord, and those are also the qualities that define Mixolydian. But it's not just Mixolydian that applies to. Every single mode has a set of key identifiable sounds that defines that mode. So let's do another chord. C major 7, sharp 11. What scale best creates that sound? Well, that's pretty easy. Sharp 11. So we know that the 4th scale degree has to be raised, right? That F has to become an F sharp, which means that if F sharp is the only thing that's changing, then we're actually no longer in the key of C, we're in the key of G, which has an F sharp in it. So a C major 7, sharp 11 belongs in the key of G, and in the key of G, C is the 1, 2, 3, 4th scale degree. So that would be C Lydian. Therefore, if we see a C major 7 sharp 11 chord, C Lydian would best represent that chord. So that's 2 examples of chords being best represented by modes, right? So dominant 7 chords get represented by Mixolydian, and sharp 11 chords get represented by Lydian. So would it be insane to make the claim that there's a mode for every single chord, or there's a chord for every single mode? Well, that's where it gets a bit complicated. If I were to play A minor 7, what mode best represents that chord? And that's the problem, right? Minor 7th chords are not very clear on what mode they're implying, right? It could be a Dorian, it could be a Phrygian, and it could be Aeolian, right? You already did that. So how can we decide what mode works best over that minor chord? Can we play any of them? Are all of them interchangeable? Sometimes yes, not all the times, usually no. It really depends on context. If we were to look at this chord and see that it goes to a B flat major, we're more inclined to believe that that is a Phrygian A minor sound. If it goes to a D7, it's more likely to be a Dorian sound. Why is that? Well, it's because we typically don't experience chords individually, but rather in a larger context, which means that we have those memories in our head. So A minor to D7, we're kind of meshing those 2 ideas together. So where does that put this general idea of everything is Lydian? How does that work into what I was saying before? Part 3. We just talked about how there are chords that need context in order to decide what mode they're coming from. right? Well, what if I said that that wasn't always true? What if I said I just lied to you? I just lied to you, I fool! Well, it's not that I lied necessarily, it's that while that is true for some chords, I believe that there are chord clusters that have the context already imposed within them. So, like I said before, all we need is 1, 3, 7, and 4 to have the Lydian sound. If I were to take that Lydian chord cluster, let's call that 1, 3, 4, and 7, even though the 4 is a sharp 4. If I play the Lydian chord cluster of F and I were to play a G in the bass, what chord is that? That becomes G13 or G7 add 6, and that's Mixolydian. So Mixolydian is nothing more than Lydian over 2. Maybe that will help us define the other modes. If we restrict our thoughts to modes of the major scale, right? So melodic minor, harmonic minor, all that stuff doesn't matter. Let's restrict our thoughts to just modes of the major scale for a second. And let's take this Lydian chord cluster, 1, 3, sharp 4, and 7, and let's put it over different bass notes. If I were to take that Lydian chord cluster in the key of C, for example, and put that over D, what chord is that? That's a D minor 6-9 chord. Okay. So it's a D minor 6-9 chord. Can the minor 6-9 chord imply any other mode? Let's go through them real quick, right? We can eliminate Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian off the bat immediately. Why? Because those are all major sounds. So the minor triadic bass just doesn't work for those chords. That leaves us with Locrian, Phrygian, Aeolian, and Dorian. Phrygian has a flat 9, Aeolian has a flat 6, Locrian has a flat 5. The minor 6-9 chord cannot work for any of those chords other than Dorian. The Lydian chord cluster is being used to define a different mode. And we can do this for all of them, right? So if we put Lydian over 3, it becomes Aeolian. If we put Lydian over 7, it becomes Phrygian. And if we put Lydian over 4, it becomes Locrian, right? So at the end of the day, each one of these modes can be defined by their relationship to the Lydian chord cluster. So the last thing that I want to talk about is how to actually use this in music making. Using this Lydian chord clusters over any type of bass note is going to give you all the benefits of using Lydian without having to necessarily be stuck on this major sound, this major 7, sharp 11, this super bright sound. You can take this chord cluster and put it over a different bass note and have access to a wide variety of different sounds. So if you want to get that Legend of Zelda ethereal sound, but you don't necessarily want everything to be bright, try using these Lydian chord clusters. If you want to try out new chord voicings, this is the way to do it. If you want to make your vocal harmonies really, really pop, this is the way to do it. If you want your melodies to be more melodic, this is how you do it. This Lydian chord cluster over any particular bass note gives you access to a much wider color palette that I think that more people should have access to. So that's the end of what I have to say. I really hope that you got something out of it, and I hope I didn't just talk your ear off for 10 minutes, but thank you for listening. I hope you have a good rest of your day. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments. I really love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what other people have to say about what I'm thinking.